We are here with Gojko Adzic, who needs no introduction, and we are going to talk about AI in organizations. So let's jump right into it. What's a use of AI that really changed how you are, Gojko, not just made you faster?
So one of the things I started doing recently is using AI, Claude Code in particular, to design front-end pages in a way that I can play with them before implementing. And this is really speeding up feedback and getting it to create a static HTML version of something that has mock data but looks like my application, how I want it to look. I got to this point because Claude was making lots of silly mistakes around that. And I wanted to figure out how to get it to stop making mistakes. And I think one of the things that's really interesting that I got kind of started to think about with working with the agents is how do we divide the problem into several smaller problems? Because if we can divide the problem into several smaller problems and then allow the agent to have some feedback on its own, then there's less things for me to review and generally everything speeds up. So after the agent made a bunch of mistakes a couple of times, I was thinking like, how do I divide this problem? And then I got it to go through the website as it is now and document all the visual language of the website. Which, I mean, in a regular enterprise case with infinite amount of money and time and designers, of course you should have that. And
Mhm.
large companies have that, but
A design system.
a standard documented, well implemented, consistent design system. But for a small company like mine, this was like out of the budget, not just money, but time and keeping that maintained. But with an AI agent, I got it to actually go through the website, document it, create a design system. Then I iterated on the design system with it because I experiment like what happens if there's a hover on this, what happens if there's a spinner here, and then created all sorts of variants of modal dialogues, all sorts of variants of forms like this, forms like that, right to left, left to right. And that took a couple of hours of basically getting the design system consistent. But once I had that, effectively this became the spec for what needs to happen next. So first of all, Claude had some piece of information to go to and to extract relevant patterns, not
Mhm.
just analyze the system all the time, but actually extract relevant patterns to apply. But also what I started being able to do is just telling it, hey, I want to introduce a new type of interaction on this page. For example, I'm doing this survey system, and I wanted to create a nice survey builder that leads people through 3 steps. And I said, I want to do this. Design me a static HTML page using my design system, and then find the gaps in the design system so we can evaluate it quickly.
Mhm.
And I go and play through the page, and once it's done, there's a reference, there's a spec effectively, there's a visual spec for there's an example for implementation. It's kind of like spec by example on visuals where we can go through all the edge cases, all the variants, how they're going to look. And then it turns out that Claude makes far fewer mistakes because of that, because there's a reference there. The feedback is much faster. I can play around on these things significantly faster. And again, these are all things that people should be doing anyway. I just didn't have time and budget to do it.
Mhm.
I had a company in 2007 where we had a proper graphics designer, proper design language, and things like that. And things used to take weeks. The designer was a massive bottleneck. We were waiting on the designer to evaluate the kind of visual language, to create new designs and things like that. And then we just skipped that for anything that's not massively critical.
Mhm.
Where doing things like this really changed my way of working because I can divide the problem into let's play around with the visuals, let's figure out the visual language, and actually kind of go and implement it back without waiting on anybody to do that. I can do that myself. I can experiment with it. I can do lots of interesting things and then kind of provide much better guidance for an agent to go and do the work. And I think that um, made the look and feel and the visuals of the application significantly better without actually